ugly sweater, I'll take it. It's not going to be fun. Well, that's the past, because if you go to Anchovy Bar or any place where focal has been installed, you're never going to have that experience again. You're going to have a delightful experience. So help me welcome my two guests today. Raj, which I call friend now. We've been knowing each other for a while. And so you're the co-founder and co-CEO of Focal that you built with your childhood friend Rohan. I don't know if you got to join us today. You have an MBA from Stanford and an MPA from Harvard. And then you started with that vision that comfort should be accessible for all while not being wasteful. And again, it's very in line with the theme of today about making things better with a good impact on the planet. So we're going to show quickly a short video so you can see the product, but hopefully you stop at that booth and saw it in action and try to stay warm. Eli, so Eli DePalmer, you're the managing partner of Atomic Workshop, the group behind Michelin-starred stable provisions and the progress. And you open Anchovy Bar during COVID, because why not, right? Make it easy. That's where you have the most challenge, I guess, of a restaurateur. And you started this business with an engineering curiosity, but also been in this space for a long time. So you two are partners. I know we also have Sean in the room, who is one of your investors from Third Sphere, so it's really a family thing today. But before we get into questions, we wanted to show a quick video so people can see the beautiful Anchovy Bar and hear from you, Eli, but in a different setup. Also, Mark, thank you.
Some of the accolades over the years for the group include James Beard Awards for Best Chefs West for Chef Stuart and Nicole. We've retained and received Michelin stars for about 10 years now for staple provisions and the progress. Anchovy Bar was celebrated by Esquire magazine as one of the best new restaurants the year that it opened, which was 2020. We're on a windy sidewalk. We're in a cityscape, and the options to provide heat to our guests in a city that's kind of one climate year-round and not particularly warm was very limited at best. So when we learned about Focal, it was a game changer, because all of a sudden we saw the ability to be able to have more physical space, make it easier for our team to function, because we were eliminating steps from their setup every day, which was really a headache. Being more environmentally friendly by getting rid of propane that drove it and a wild expense.
Before Focal kind of feels clunky, and now it just feels smooth and easy. Like we don't have to think about it or worry about it. We just know that, the guest's heat is taken care of. We would spend a lot of time hauling propane from where we'd have to store it in the alleyway, setting them up every day. So it's just hard on everyone's bodies, really, to set that up every day, and just costs a lot of time and labor.
Hi, I'm Stuart Briosa. I'm the
I'm going to stop here. You can go see the rest of the video on YouTube, but we wanted to jump into questions. So from childhood friendship to building a robotic company, you have to tell us a little bit more about the origin story. Raj, how did you get to build Focal?
Yeah. This is my favorite question. So Rohan, my co-founder, and I, we've known each other for 20 plus years. We grew up back in India, met in elementary school, became fast friends, went to Singapore for high school, we were roommates in Singapore, and came to the States in 2012. And as two people who had spent most of our times in warmer parts of the world, when we came to the US, being in a cold environment, we had to think a lot about warming, and always found ourselves, needing a little bit more. And what we also started realizing was any space we walked into, it was, centrally heated, centrally conditioned, with these very wasteful, systems. And we're like, hey, there just has to be a better way. Comfort is such a personal thing. Like everyone here, has been in a place where either too hot or too cold, or disagree with someone you're sharing the space with about what to do, with your thermostat. And for us, it was COVID times as well when Rohan and I started thinking about this after he officiated my wedding. My wife is here too. She was there at the founding moment of doing this. And we started seeing restaurants were moving outdoors. And it was such a core part of, the livelihood of the business as well. Seating these seats, how do you drive utilization, and comfort being such a core part of operations for the business. But they had these very archaic analog products that we hadn't seen any innovation with over a long time. And every time we would walk by, a cityscape, and we would see propane heaters are on and no one's there, we're like, there was a lot of effort that someone did to actually put them there to begin with, but they're extremely wasteful, fire hazard, so many issues with it, and people are always complaining. So we're like, hey, there just has to be a better way that feels very human and something that also can be very functional. So that was a little bit of the founding story. And Rohan's a roboticist, and he saw this as a robotics challenge, and we just ran with it.
I love that. And I love also how you started both with a conviction about comfort should be natural, and we all love that. And we just saw with Paul, the combination of hardware and software is also giving so much option. But also you're starting very humbly. You're saying how you go up and down Mission Street and Valencia Street and just knocking on door basically to learn about the customer. So I think it's a beautiful story also of people being outsiders, and many of our stories today are people who got a conviction and a passion about an industry and just do all this work of discovery. But
if I can say one thing, that's such a good point. We didn't know, any restaurateurs. We just came here summer of 2022. We were like, hey, where can we heat people in May? San Francisco. And we literally, a friend was out of town, for 3 weeks. We we're cat sitting, went up and down Mission Street, Valencia Street, talked to all the restaurateurs, service staff that we could talk to. And that's truly, what built a lot of conviction. And I think a core part of our learning was important, in our meeting with Eli and her team too.
Actually, let's talk about this intro, how you got to learn about focal, because it's not what we expect. Working from MBA and thinking about our go-to-market. You got a cold email?
I did, which is so funny. When I was telling you this the other day, we had a pre-meeting, and I have to say that in our business, I've been with Stuart and Nicole, the chef owners of Atomic Workshop, and my business partners. Nicole's here, by the way, today, and so I'm really happy to have her here. In our business, part of what I think is my responsibility is constantly looking at the big picture. What do we need? What is coming down the pipe? And being informed in any and all things. So whether that makes life better for our team, whether it makes life better for our guests, it's important. And so, yes, we get a lot of cold emails, as you might imagine, and in about 1 second, I can usually tell if this is going to be something interesting. And I would say 99.6% of the time, it is not of interest to us. But in this case, I personally, as same with Stuart and Nicole, we all really believe we run our businesses around sustainability in all manners of things. And so when I saw that there could be a more eco-friendly version of something that honestly we were hating, how we were heating with the old mushroom heaters. Not only are they hideous, and we've taken a lot of great pains to provide beautifully designed spaces. Has anyone ever been to any of the restaurants? Yay, thank you. Then you can attest, we put a lot of thought and time and energy and vision into those spaces. So to roll out these beaten down looking mushroom heaters that are inefficient, they are very costly. Propane is just, an abomination, honestly. To see that there could be an alternative really piqued my interest. In all honesty, I didn't hold a whole lot of hope that it could be as good as what Raj was saying, but it was worth the conversation because I always want to learn what's happening and what could be possible.
So we're in a room full of nerds, and you have all the cool keywords: robotic, AI, learning, software, hardware. But hardware is really hard, as we know. Can you maybe walk us through a little bit some of the how Focal is built and some of the design challenges building the product?
Yeah, I mean, I also want to say something that's very core to who we were as, product thinkers, designers. We're bringing a novel experience for the first time. We thought of our early customers as partners. We did not know what would be most beneficial, to their workflows. And the commercial product that you're seeing, that's our 4th generation that we've actually, now it's certified to yield standards, and, we're scaling. The earlier versions were a lot of, quick, tight loops. With the robotic system, as people might already know, it's really hard. You need to get the hardware logged in, get your vendors logged in before you actually commit to, building the algorithms that you need to actually run compute very efficiently. So we had to do a lot of the learning very quickly, and for that, doing in-house, manufacturing was important, and rapidly deploy or die is the motto on our team as well. And then that's at the Anchovy Bar, we had deployed 2 earlier versions of product that really gave us a lot of learnings early.
Anything that surprised you in the supply chain, in the sourcing?
I think, as folks who had always, we have a team that, was a Tesla, Zoox, from manufacturing backgrounds. In-house manufacturing never scared us. I think, and, supply chain woes, it's part of the hard work of building products. The hard things around what we're building is the user interaction. So how do we actually give control to individuals to communicate to our system in a way that they don't have to log in, download apps, and it's a very, like you're there and then you leave, and you don't want to have to learn a new thing. So how do you do that? And we leaned into QR code as a mechanism to drive people to just access a very simple control. And that was a big learning iteration cycle of like, where should that sit? Where does that actually go on the product? And then what is the most design forward way in which you won't notice the QR code until you sat down and you looked at the heat and you're like, I would like something else, and then you'll see the QR code. But if you're walking by, you won't actually see it. So very core to our design challenges that we actually worked with Eli and the team on very early on.
I want to hear more, because I know you hate QR codes. You told me that.
I did tell you that. We hate QR
For
codes.
menu, just to be clear, for menus.
COVID brought about QR codes to restaurants in an effort to be hygienically safe, and yet they're also so antithetical to the design that I was talking about before. Our menus are a genuine extension of our brand and our offerings and what we're providing. And so to just distill it to a QR code and have it on stuck to a table just was not hospitable to us. And so, and we went with it for, I don't know, Nicole, 6 months. I mean, not long, and we just couldn't take it anymore. So we really appreciate the thoughtfulness that Raj and his team have brought to integrating not only a good system, but a very easy system to use.
And one thing we discussed is how when you design the product, it looks like beautiful lamps, right? Something that adds to the design and you didn't want to take away from the food. Maybe if you want to say a bit more about the design philosophy, because I can imagine you run Michelin-starred restaurants, so the guest experience, you probably think about every fold in the napkin, every detail. We'd love for you to just share what comes into your mind when you bring a new supplier that you may alter the guest experience, and then eventually how does that actually transform that experience?
That's a great question, and I think a lot of it has to do with trust, and trust has to be earned over time, right? But Raj made it very clear, first of all, he was incredibly communicative, and I think we're both pretty straightforward, and I think we both also probably like to set expectations and then try to exceed them. And so we were compatible in that respect. We never could have known that about each other until we started working together. But for Raj, I think it was and I'm going to speak for you a little bit, and I feel funny about that, so please jump in if I don't get this right. But I think it was, as he said, such an important time in the beginning and in the story of Focal. And for us, we really had presented this challenge that he was looking to solve. And we were at a point where we really wanted to believe, and there were some hurdles that we can get into, but it's an electric system, and being on a sidewalk, we didn't have enough electricity in our space to pull out to the sidewalk, and so we had to work with our landlord and PG&E and talk about and they worked with us along this way. So there's more to the story than just, oh, we like these pretty heaters and we put them in. It was a whole relationship and a path of how do we get from A to B. In the meantime, Raj and his team were also designing and refining their design on the heaters, and they were bigger. And now they're so small and sexy. I mean, they look really great, and they glide along the rail. They're just easy to use, but it's, I think it was trust, and like I said, that was built over time.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I would add to what Eli mentioned was, how do you simplify at every step of the customer journey? That was a very important part of our design philosophy, and 120 volt plug-in architecture that allows you to actually use existing circuitry that you may have, and pulling it through a single conduit into an exterior space. How do you best do that? And what's the easiest way in which we can make that happen? That was a core part of this partnership, and then also thinking about, because it's a plug-in product and you're discretizing heat delivery, you can't have each heater have a cord. That actually makes it pretty visually noisy. So then how do you think about a rail architecture and a design that allows you to install heaters on a rail, and then the rail can be plugged in? And that was an evolution that we went through. So a lot of important design thinking, asking very first principles questions. And I think, as we heard from Sway and Cool team's experiences, how do we learn from what other folks are doing? Tracks, for lighting have been around for a very long time, but they're not rated for outdoor use. What is the outdoor rated, like low voltage, power delivery mechanism that you can design? And we actually have a novel IP on power delivery as well, by virtue of asking some of these design questions that were very relevant to a lot of our customers.
Amazing. And recognize, I didn't mention your Fast Company Award for 2026. Congrats, by the way.
Thank you.
One thing we discussed is also you care so much about your staff. I know you say Anchovy Bar is kind of tight, Anchovy style, but obviously there's a lot of operation behind moving these old type of heaters. And I'm curious how you thought about the return on investment, right? What was the business case between operation, the guest experience, replacing? How did you think about it?
This was huge for us. Restaurants, as a business model, run on very small margins. You probably heard that, if not during COVID times. I'm not sure when else you would have known it, but it's not a traditional business model. And so we look at the cost of everything very carefully. And it has to pencil out for us. Propane and the heaters, the mushroom heaters that we were having to replace, was expensive in and of itself. The original investment of the Focal was going to be expensive, but over time, when you take out the labor that it costs to for our team to pull the heaters out from, as Corey said in the video, from an alley and lug the heaters and manage the purchasing of the propane and managing the storage of the propane and dealing with those heaters. I'm sure you've dined out and seen how inefficient they are. First of all, the heat just goes out into the ether, but people are always messing with them. The service team was constantly trying to get them started. It's labor that you can't even totally track. And they're hideous, and you kind of can't put a price on that. So when you pencil all of those things out, it was a no-brainer. Again, we had this extraordinary experience, and I have no doubt that anyone, moving forward with vocal heaters would also have an incredible experience. But we had this where we were really trying to make it work for one another. We had this really nice symbiotic relationship, and so Raj wanted it to work so much for us, and he's really made it work. But we did invest, and I don't think we would ever look back from that, because there's also the cost that you can't also measure, which is the guest experience. But we do know that, in a rainstorm, people are sitting in our parklet and they're enjoying the pitter patter of the rain with these wonderful heaters that are totally effective, which is such a miracle in this city. And there's no wind, and you're totally cozy. And if I run cold, which is true, and Raj runs hot, and I have no idea, but we can be sitting across the table from one another and having, a perfectly lovely, comfortable experience, because we've got personalized heat experience based on the QR code, and you dial in the heat as you need or want. And it's not just frying the top of your head, but it is focused on you. It's really amazing what they've created, and I don't fully understand it because I'm a restaurant person, but it's pretty cool.
So you have to try it here. And we can see a little bit of the app, right? And how you can decide the level of heat.
Yeah, one thing that I learned from Corey, who heads up a lot of the facilities and operations at the Anchovy Bar, was one thing that they started noticing was when hosts took reservations, they were telling people that, hey, you should sit in the park. There'll be a personalized heating. And that actually drove people to sit outside, because in many groups, one person, runs too hot or too cold, and that is one of the reasons why, you can't really seat those tables. So that was a very important aha moment for us, that it's a very important part of core operations and also marketing these seats that, we enable. So we learned so many things every single week from our customers in terms of how they're changing their operations in the service of a better guest experience.
I would just add one more thing, and that is the mushroom heaters are large, right? We've all seen them, they're big and they take up a lot of space. Well, we had, 6 or 8 of them? Well, you remove those, and what do you put in place? Chairs and tables. A chair to a restaurant equates to a guest, which equates to money. And so that right there, we gained about 8 seats in our very small restaurant. That's wildly impactful.
And if I may add, I heard also that people are talking about it on Instagram. So the marketers in me is really happy that you also get some UGC and some more visibility and just delight. I think we all want to get those moments really special. Going out is not something you necessarily do every day, and making it wonderful is really great. I know we almost have time. I want to also open up for questions, but Raj, what if you look back, what do you wish you knew before you started that journey, and what can you tell some of the early stage founders? I know we have a lot of stealth founders. I don't know what they're working on in the room. What would be your advice?
The biggest thing that served us really well in the early days, but definitely continues to do, is that customer learning and obsessing with how the customer is using existing products or what you're trying to deliver in terms of value. There's just no substitute to actually getting out there, talking to them, doing those door-to-door visits, and that learning will compound over time, especially if you get the right product formulation. And early customers who actually want to partner with you and want to solve this pain that they feel on a daily basis. So I would say, go in, it'll be hard for the first 5 times that you do it, but the 6th time will be so easy, and you're gonna meet one person who wants to have a real conversation, and that will fuel you for the next 100 no's.
Eli, same question for you. You're obviously an early adopter and someone who has passion for quality and experience. What else can you tell that audience about partnering with someone like you?
I think I'll just mirror what Raj said. I mean, it's finding the right people, right? As I said, you look at 1,000 emails and you respond to one because it's written the right way or it's solving a problem that actually relates to you. And so I guess it's just to not give up on knocking on doors, not to give up on recognizing that you're bringing value to the table in what you're trying to do, because there are people out there, and small business owners are busy people, so understanding that and really trying to develop a methodology of communication that will reach them is, I think, probably the target. But they're out there. I mean, they're also small business owners are very curious by nature and eager to constantly push the bar a little higher.
Wonderful. Question in the room for Raj. Yep. Do you want to?
Thank you. First of all, just really wonderful storytelling. Veronique, I really appreciate the questions, and it's really nice to see this partnership that you guys have. I have a question for Raj on scalability. We've used this example, which is really great, of knocking on doors, writing the right email, finding the right partner, being able to just be present, be physically there. How is that working now, whether it's just within San Francisco and reaching other restaurants? How are you thinking about it, if not globally across the US? How are you kind of shifting? You might be there, I don't know where we're at right now, but what does that look like right now in terms of scalability and expanding business?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So this week's a pretty special week for us as well. We're expanding to Southern California. So we are expanding geographic footprint as well. And then I think the most important part is, how do you scale this go-to-market motion, right? The important learning that we got from being out there was these important tidbits around what actually delivers real value to the operator, understanding what's important for the Anchovy Bar versus what's important to Equator Coffees versus what's important to Pacific Catch. So we have such a diverse customer base already within the Bay Area. So this geo-focus gave us a lot of opportunity to learn, and a lot of opportunity to learn very quickly, to talk to different customers. And now with the AI tools that you have and the GTM motions that you can run very quickly, you can actually get to a lot of customers, very quickly. And how do you scale that, voice that we have? And I think for us, it's always going to be an important aspect of finding the right scale partners. So I think, Sway and Quilt all mentioned, right, they rely a lot on partners. For us, we also rely on, install partners, electric contractors, architects, GCs, and they're coming to us and telling us, hey guys, you have a 120 volt plug-in product. Can we take your product to other customers, other markets? And we heard about what you're doing, through an architect in Missouri. We're opening a massive car park, with a restaurant and bar in Denver. We would love to install your product. So there's a lot of virality with building something that is curbside exposure that speaks to such a human aspect, both on the guest experience and the staff experience side, that's scaling in a beautiful way.
I think we're gonna move the next question to live to that booth. Okay, one quick. Yeah.
Hello, thanks. That was a great panel. As someone who left a restaurant on Friday because I was too cold, I enjoyed your product greatly. A lot of the panels today have been about this idea of abundance. And you talked about that first cold email that you sent. I'd love to hear, Raj, about how you've adjusted, from that email to now, how you talk about not just from the cold and the negatives, but how you actually speak to the positive value add that you bring.
We have learned everything from our customers and end users. And one of the things that we have learned is how joyful this experience is. We learned from our customers that people are reviewing our product on Yelp and OpenTable and Google reviews pages. So for us to tell them that, hey, this is what people are saying about our product, and this is what we would love to do for you if this is the right time, that has just been something that, hey, if this is something that you want to do, let's do it. Because there's a lot of joy and additionality that's being created that translates to customer loyalty. It translates to having a delightful meal and an experience where you're just in community. And third places are so important for societies in general. And I think for us, to be have this chance to, work with restaurants which are such a core part of any, city, town, community that you're a part of, it's just such a special thing, and I think we're leaning into a lot of that.
Such a beautiful way to end that panel. And I think, again, we're talking a lot of B2B solutions today, but at the end of the day, us as consumers have so much more power than we think. And we hope this event is all inspiring you to support all these brands and projects. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Enrique, who's been working so much behind the scene, making a lot of magic happen. Thank you so much, first of all, Eli and Raj.